Wad Fam Chalk Pod.
Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. It's a big episode, guys.
It's the last one, kind of.
Yeah, we're kind of drawing a conclusion on Blackgaard, which is kind of the most Odyssey ever is.
Yeah.
And I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo. Still.
Crazy that we still have our own names after doing this for nearly 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, goodness. The places that I've been.
Places this show has taken us. We're making it sound like we're not even ending Blackgaard, but
No.
This episode is called The Final Conflict, as we will definitely be talking about. It was supposed to conclude the show.
Yeah.
At which point, we would not have a podcast.
Yeah, we would be done. That would be it.
Like, this podcast would never exist if Odyssey only lasted from 88 to 95.
Yeah. No, that's
There's
true.
no way.
Yeah.
The only reason I got into it is because it was still being created.
Mm-hmm.
If it was just some dusty thing sitting on a shelf that all aired before I was alive,
I still would have listened to it, but I definitely wouldn't have listened to it the same amount.
I don't think I would have gotten roped in. I would be such a different person.
Yeah.
Maybe better, probably worse.
I can't really speak for that. We've covered this show for 2 years, and it's still
I would have 2 years of my
what
life
it's done
back.
to my life.
So we'd definitely get these last 2 years back if I hadn't done this. But
We're not having an existential crisis here.
No, not at all. This episode doesn't make me think about anything.
No.
So yeah, the episode is called The Final Conflict. I don't know if we've talked about that.
Yep,
but
that's
it
the
is.
last one.
Which is a really interesting. So I'm just gonna say this one off the top because I think it's a fun tidbit. When they were plotting out these episodes, they were talking about, because it was supposed to be the end of the show, and the final conflict was pulling from C.S. Lewis's The Last Battle, which is the same title.
Yes. The Final Conflict, The Last Battle. Yeah.
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 I had a great realization
incredibly
of
loose
that.
parody.
I was happy with I see. You guys found a thesaurus.
Yes, well done.
Good
You
bit.
discovered it.
And so, it's episode 334. It is the final track on Darkness Before Dawn. It was written by Phil Lawler and Paul McCusker. Directed by Phil Lawler. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a slightly tainted feeling towards Phil Lawler. I'm sorry.
Me too.
But, whatever.
Okay.
We'll get into it.
And
also, this episode aired October 7th of 1995.
Yeah, and this could have been it. I mean, the show's never going to end, right?
No.
Not until...
not unless Focus runs out of money.
That's what I was going to say. Not until
and that's
Focus
not
goes
going to happen.
bankrupt, no.
They are doing quite well.
What is their net worth?
So the 2011 fiscal year reportings, as of Wikipedia, $95 million.
Wow. Okay, let's be fair. There's no way that they are still running that hot 8 years later. Because 2011, that was like right around album 50, right?
Well, but this is focused on the family as a whole. This isn't Adventures at Odyssey. Like,
is there really a difference?
Yes.
What does Focus on the Family do other than Odyssey?
What?
Other than, like, Plugged In and stuff.
I was going to say, Plugged In, Clubhouse Magazine.
Oh, we've been over this, yes.
But also, like, some real great lobbying and being in political takes and, the things we love about
conservative media.
Yeah.
So, do we have any cast members of note, new ones for this episode that you feel like covering?
We only have one person we haven't talked about before, which is good friend and audio engineer Bob Luttrell doing Mort Gunderson, who is our single episode appearance reporter working for Odyssey 105.
Yeah, and also, we hear Odyssey's weather in this.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. And of course it was like the quintessential, and it's another beautiful day in Odyssey today with suns and partly sun. Like,
Yeah. It's Genericville.
Yeah. Trickle Lake.
Forest Mountain. All right.
I'm just so nervous, man. This is the last episode, and I just don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, we're never talking about Odyssey again.
No, but it feels like that, man.
Yeah, it really does.
Even with Novacom, there was always like the thing where it's like, oh, well, we're going to do another big arc.
Right, we've got Blackgaard.
Now that we're finishing up Blackgaard, it's like, I mean, obviously we're not going to stop the show, but this feels like, I mean, this is the finale of Odyssey in a certain sense.
Right. At one point in a literal sense.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm going to roll this final promo. We'll see how it does.
The end is near on the next Adventure in Odyssey. Thanks to a deadly virus, Dr. Regis Blackgaard is poised to conquer Odyssey and then the world. Meanwhile, Jack and Jason gather their troops for the final conflict. Don't miss this collision course between good and evil next time on Adventures in Odyssey.
They got the tone right.
Yeah, and the music's real good too.
Mm-hmm. It's like some alien stuff right there.
It starts off with "The end is near."
Mm-hmm.
It also had a bit of a Tron vibe, but also he name checks Collision Course, which is part 2 of Plan B.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Missing in action, Collision Course.
And isn't there Plan B part 3? Does that count?
There's 3 and 4. I just don't remember what they're called, which is why I stalled out. But yeah.
So
this is an episode.
I have feelings.
And it doesn't even have wit in it. Like,
yeah.
Man.
But I mean, you got to think about it from their perspective. They had, they had to come to grips with the fact that either they could end the show or they could get another wit.
Right, exactly.
You know,
their thought was, so the thought was ending Odyssey, Adventures in Odyssey, the show, but they would start up another show probably set in the same universe.
Mm-hmm.
But it would get a new name with maybe some carryover characters, probably mostly new stuff, but not like, it wouldn't just be another season of Adventures in Odyssey.
Would it be still in Odyssey, presumably?
I forget. I feel like there was a bunch of different
ideas thrown around.
Yeah.
I have such a difficult relationship with spin-offs. Sometimes they're like amazing and they're exactly what I want, but most of the time they're so thoroughly disappointing, it's very hard. And that one, like, for those of the Chalk Squad that don't know, I occasionally play basketball, and I'm not good at basketball, but I will take 3-point shots, and I will make 1 out of 9 3-point shots. And that one that goes in makes me completely willing to take another 8 misses. And that's exactly how I feel about spinoffs. The one good one is like, well, I mean, the spinoff could be good.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they do eventually Last Chance Detectives as a spinoff. Also,
I can't explain why.
Passages is kind of a failure of a spinoff.
Yeah.
Kidsborough is kind of a failure of a spinoff. Last Chance Detectives,
a failure of a spinoff.
Like, yeah. Odyssey hasn't. But also, I feel like in addition to those not really working or being successful, they also didn't commit real hard to them.
No, because I think they could just as easily put out they could put out a full Kidsborough album, I feel like now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I honestly, I wish that the club was a spin-off show.
Yeah, no, that would be much better. Of my dipping my toes into the social media universe surrounding Adventures in Odyssey, there's been a lot of negative feedback regarding club exclusive episodes, and it just being like, this doesn't feel like Odyssey if not everybody gets to hear the same stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I definitely feel that. I definitely agree with that.
Right.
I think that maybe just keeping stuff, even if it's just main characters focused and then like tangential, like for the OA club, like.
Yeah, and like from my impression of the club, they have been able to do some of that where there are characters that exist only in the club episodes, even though they interact with characters from the regular episodes. It's just like, but they only exist there, and likewise characters from the regular episodes who never show up in club episodes. So like they're kind of sort of doing it, but like I almost wish that it was just, hey, we completely spun this off, and this is like, set it at the Wits End in Connellsville and give me all new characters there for a while. Like, for all we know, the Wits End in Connellsville still exists.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been written out of the show, to my understanding.
No, that is my impression as well. So it's like, you could do something like that.
That's
and
a
then,
perfect spin-off. Why has that not focused on the family?
And
you owe me money.
The great thing about that spin-off is it's then like, if that, like, because they're doing it, if they do it on the club and that garners enough force behind it, they then also have a plan for when regular Odyssey is no longer viable. Mm-hmm. When we lose, Katie Lee or Will Ryan or someone else who is so core to the center of Odyssey.
How old are both those actors? I think they're not young.
No, they're not. The last thing I want to do is be like, yeah, they're on their way out, because like I hope they live forever, but like eventually that's going to, like, it's an interesting conundrum of like, is that what breaks Odyssey? But I also feel like, well, they might just get written off and sent to different places. Connie gets married and moves out of town. Eugene and Katrina decide to go back to, the jungles of Africa. Like, whatever. Like, they could pivot it in a way that...
Eugene's 80.
Yeah.
Connie's 61.
Okay.
Connie's much younger.
Yeah, so Katie Lee's still got plenty
That's what
of time,
I want.
But
That's what I want. I want a spin-off where Connie becomes the wit of the next thing, and she takes over Wits End Conniesville.
I hate that, but it's great.
T-shirt?
No, I don't know what that T-shirt would look like, but yeah, I do. Yeah, honestly, if Connie can become the new wit, I'm down with that as well. But also, like, yeah,
is that too progressive for Focus on the Family to go?
Probably, dude. If you have to ask the question, the answer is yes.
That's fair.
Like, I mean, yeah. Odyssey,
I don't know. Maybe they would. Maybe
Odyssey has occasionally surprised me. We talked about that in One Bad Apple,
color.
And Pink is Not My Color.
A throwback.
But yeah, it is also like McCusker and Lawler have got to be getting up there too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, they must be ancient.
So there's also that factor of like, how do, like, once the initial creative force is gone, how do we manage?
Not well, presumably. Paul McCusker. Oh, what? He's 61. He's Connie's age.
Oh, okay. Good. They just always look gray.
Yeah.
But
a silver fox, perhaps. Anyway, we should probably start covering the episode.
Yeah,
We've been stalling because, as we mentioned, we are scared.
Yeah.
Basically, the episode comes in. There's no real intro. There's just music.
Well, no, we get the And Now Adventures in Odyssey, the classic Chris Five-word.
Yeah. And we basically get Jason catching up Jack on everything. So the episode ended last week with kind of Jason coming to terms with the fact that he was going to have to be completely honest with Jack and tell him everything. And so this episode kind of picks up with that, talking about the TA-418 stuff, talking about really just the whole Blackgaard saga recap.
And also all of his stuff with being a secret agent.
Yep.
So he explains like he, worked for the NSA most of his life. Wit was more of a consultant. He was never actually on the payroll.
Yeah.
Which was a nice clarification. And
so was he ever an NSA agent, or was he just somebody that was a consultant that
he was never on the payroll? So no, he was not.
Okay.
That's asked and answered.
Yeah.
And then Jack's kind of like, well, how does Blackgaard fit into all this? And Jason's like, well, we thought he was a secret agent, but like best I can figure, he's a megalomaniac who just wants power and money. And Jack's like, well, how does that factor into what's happening now? And Jason's like, well, this mineral that's below Wit's End is like a catalyst / trigger for TA-418, which then goes into the formula with Ruku, which creates Rukuta, but they don't ever say Rukuta in this episode. But the TA-418 enhanced by the mineral at Wit's End attaches to the DNA of the Ruku virus and causes it to be able to adapt to anything. And so that's Blackguard's power play. Is like, hey, I have a super virus that I can like just murder everyone with, and I'm going to use that to have a ton of power and control over everything.
Because I've sold my soul to Satan.
Right. We'll get into it.
Yeah. I forgot about that part.
We'll get into it.
Anyway.
So he then goes on to talk about stuff that we kind of covered in the last episode, but it's laid out more clearly here, which is the Israelites are stationed around Wit's End. Eugene and Bernard are on the maintenance road, and then also brings up that Shaw comes in and is like, okay, I called the NSA. Your story checks out. I will fully cooperate with you, but you got to fill me in.
So, to set the scene here, we have established that we have probably 10 middle schoolers hidden.
I mean, later in the episode, it sounds like hundreds.
Yeah, I'm...
It's like Riders of Rohan.
Yeah, exactly. There's an indefinite amount.
Yeah. It's not like orc numbers, but it's way more than you want to count.
Yes, exactly. There's so many voices in that one scene, and it sounds just like an absolute swarm of them.
Yep.
But, yeah, no. We can get into the militarization of children later, I suppose.
Yeah.
When that becomes a thing. But that's been that is a thing for this whole episode for me, where it's just like...
You mean this whole series?
Well, this whole series, but specifically this episode, because you see them in action, where it's like, okay, so they've got walkie-talkies. They're basically playing Daniel Boone in the woods surrounding a ice cream shop and Discovery Emporium with hopes of shutting down a literal international terrorist with biological warfare.
And explosives.
And they are armed with presumably soft scrub and walkie-talkies.
And, very importantly, biblical robes.
Yep, biblical robes. Cast of Lawrence of Arabia.
Watched that one last night. And so we then go out to the first commercial break, come back, and it's Mark Gunderson with from Odyssey 105, who is a brand new invention for this episode.
Love it.
As well as I think Odyssey 105 being new.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like
Start the Chronicle.
You have a radio station that is like that specific to your town?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, that is strange. I mean, I guess I don't know.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But like the number of news outlets in Odyssey that are Odyssey specific. Like that is the wiki article I want more than anything, is someone consolidating all of the news nonsense throughout Odyssey.
Well, isn't
into
it a
one
thing
place.
where there's like where you have like, you know, sublets of major networks and stuff, so it's like like, there's a local broadcaster talking about the news on, you know, the local top 40 station or whatever, and then it cuts to, like, the main guy in New York City having an interview with, like, Ariana Grande.
Yeah, absolutely. But, like, that's not a person from a town.
That's fair.
They're always regional.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that is
this
fair.
is a literal town.
A small town.
Yes. If it was like Campbell County,
Yeah.
like maybe. But like I've even like I don't even hear like county specific news. It's
No.
usually region, like kind of the tri-county area.
Yeah.
Sort of deal.
That general swath of the state.
Yes.
Oh, so the thing that we didn't really talk about was that he also told Jack that everything that was been happening politically with the recall was all just so Blackgaard could get power and get control over the mineral. And so at this point where it seems like his mission is accomplished, it's now the falling action for Blackgaard, and this is kind of when Jason steps up. So my frustration with this episode begins... Okay. It's somehow anticlimactic.
Interesting.
So, because they try and cover everything, because they have to tie up so much in one episode,
Yes.
I feel like it wasn't as satisfying as the ending for Novacom. I think that this has been a much more enjoyable build, but I think that the ending of Novacom was way more satisfying.
Yeah, I could get behind that argument.
Although, I think it is worth mentioning the fact that Novacom took place over, like, we've talked about this before. Novacom took place over, like, 3 really condensed albums, basically,
Correct.
with, like, not much time off.
Right.
And so they had a lot more continuity in building it up, and therefore had more luxury to kind of unwind it.
Right.
But all of it coming together in this episode, it felt kind of anticlimactic in a certain sense. But it was excellent. I can't say anything negative about this episode. Well, that's not true. But I can't say that I don't like this episode. But especially thinking about it now within the context of then, you know, covering Novacom in the similar fashion, I was kind of disappointed in how it all ended up working out, because the NSA kind of comes in and does all the work for them.
I don't know that I really feel that.
Okay, so they didn't do all the work for them, but it was basically like the NSA shows up and then we're winning. That was the vibe that I got from it, and that's what I was kind of like, eh.
I think the point is that unlike Novacom, where Novacom is resolved by all of their plans being thwarted, this series is resolved, like, the crux of the Blackgaard Chronicles is Jack and Blackgaard's conversation in the tunnel. It's not, oh man, like, we, like, stopped the baddies.
Yeah. And that's fair. And I suppose being thoroughly disappointed by that conversation, I was a bit more pessimistic about the episode.
Yeah, right. Oh, so yes. So Mork Gunderson's talking on the on Odyssey 105 about Blackgaard's condition, saying that he is stable but weak. And then we pan out to Eugene having listened to that in a car that he and Bernard are in.
A Tercel, perhaps?
Who knows? That is the only car in Odyssey confirmed. So, so Eugene then goes, "There's something rotten in the state of Denmark," to quote Shakespeare. It's like, all right, buddy, we get it.
We get it. You're smart. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, but he like goes through, is like, on page 10, verse 11, it is, you know, Shakespeare says,
Yeah.
as I am Eugene and smart.
And no sub-paragraphs because IQ.
Yeah. And then Bernard shows back up in the van and asks for a breath mint, having canvassed the area and found Barvel's van.
He siphoned the gas with his mouth.
He did. That isn't revealed in this moment.
But he siphoned the gas with his mouth.
I mean, you always start a siphon. Well, okay, you don't always, but you usually start a siphon with the mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just stick a tube down the tank, you start sucking,
Yep.
and then it comes through.
Yep.
It keeps going because of how water works.
Yeah. Pressure
Liquid.
and such.
Yeah. And so we then jump to the Israelites. Billy is talking with. We hear Billy like reference Bernard on across the radio. Bernard's code name is Window Washer.
Yep. Poor guy.
No, it's great.
Wow.
I love it. It's a good code name. It doesn't hide much, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Sam's going to leave because he's getting tired. But then Jellyfish shows up, followed by Rodney Rathbun.
Rathbun. He's like, yeah, you're gonna give me their laptop. Well, because, okay, perfect expositional dialogue moment, right? Jellyfish does the classic villain thing where he Jellyfish sits down and announces exactly what he's going to do with what he's going to do, and then Rodney comes in and stops him. He's like, now for a little journaling or whatever he says. Yep. And then Rodney comes in and he's like, no, you're gonna give me the laptop. And Jellyfish.
Hey, that's not even happening yet.
What? That's not even happening yet?
Nope.
Frick.
We have a real quick cutaway.
Oh. What's the cutaway to?
They're going into the tunnel, and then like that's where that scene ends. Is just them viewing it and saying, "All right, we're gonna move in," and then we jump to a doctor arguing with Blackgaard about the about like vague medical stuff, and like he's not listed at all on the credits on the wiki.
So it's not Bovril.
No, it's not Bovril because he constantly calls him doctor, not professor. And he sounds weirdly like Glossman.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So I was like, is this our boy Paul McCusker trying to do a voice?
Yeah, he must be, or something. Or
yeah,
just speaking quieter, perhaps?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's really bizarre. But we don't know who that is. Yep. And so then Glossman comes in and explains the plan where like they're reporters waiting in the lobby, so Blackgaard's going to go down to talk to them, and then they'll get him to go out the back where Bovril will be with the van, and then we go back to the scene you were talking about, in which
we get the final showdown between Jellyfish and Rodney, in which Rodney's like, no, you're going to give me that because like I want it. He's like, oh yeah, you and what army? And then a swarm.
Well, first Billy and Sam show up.
Okay, that's fine. Billy and Sam show up.
And Jellyfish tries to pull a Blackgaard where he's like, how are you gonna pin this on me? It's just your word against mine. And they're like, that would be the case, but Maxwell is alive. And he's like, oh no, Maxwell's alive. I'm screwed. Throws his laptop, which Sam catches.
Yeah. He does the villain thing of like, here, incredibly valuable thing. Take this as a distraction so I can leave.
Yep, and he's running out the tunnel when 100 Israelites surround him.
I'm imagining, like, a tidal wave of ants, presumably. Just, like, you ever seen that, like, ants just swarm something? And
yeah,
they just
of course. I've watched The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Exactly. So, that's what's happening here. Clearly.
Absolutely.
Just, I'm talking 50 to 100 middle schoolers grabbing on like a bunch of monkeys, just dragging him to the ground, and him being so defeated, he just goes, no!
Yep.
And that's how
Jellyfish... Then we leave that scene.
Yeah, that's how Jellyfish gets his just desserts, being swallowed whole by an army of middle schoolers.
Yeah. Yep. Which... I assume for budget reasons, does not include Connie or Lucy.
No.
Our two female members of the Israelites, and the only two members of the Israelites that we know of outside of Billy and Sam.
Yeah, no. These are the expendable crewmen, as it were.
Yeah.
The expendable middle schoolers.
Right. Yes. No, it's great. I don't know what you're talking about. So we go back to the hospital now. It's this press conference, and Blackgaard reveals that due to his health and the advice of his doctor, he is dropping out of the mayoral race.
Yeah, he can't continue, and then he goes into the back, and
he and Glossman walk out together.
Yeah,
he leaves with Bovril. Glossman stays behind and gets cornered by Bart.
Yeah, so basically, Glossman is getting ready to go back out there, so he goes over the plan with Blackgaard, and Glossman's getting ready to go out and address the press, because basically this is going to be how he takes power in Odyssey. He's going to fill the shoes of Tom Riley, because Blackgaard makes the statement, like, the re-election should still go on, you guys still deserve a good person, so, Glossman is in prime position to take over, and then Bart is like, hey, so, like, you know, he didn't endorse me for mayor. The whole point of letting him mess up my shop was so that he would endorse me for mayor. And Glossman basically is like, nope.
No, it's not even your shop. Remember that.
Yeah, that's
Get
basically,
out of here,
he
Bart.
gaslights him.
Yep.
He gaslights the shenanigans out of him.
Yes. And then we hear him kind of like mumble about, you're not going to double cross me. Mm-hmm. And then it seems like we would cut away to something else and come back. But I don't know if there's a deleted scene here or what. Mm-hmm. But we just jump right back in to now they're at the press conference and Bart is doing what he said.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, I'll get you at some point in the future. It's like,
no,
I'll
right
get
now.
you. We can now go to the scene where I get you. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's just a weird call.
So the way this plays out in my head, right, which is actually kind of cinematically beautiful, they're behind a curtain for some reason, or they're in a back room. They're in the green room, right?
Right.
They have this conversation. Glossman steps out, starts answering questions from the press. Bart works his way out the back, goes all the way around to the very back of the crowd.
Right. Oh, yeah, he's definitely in the back of the crowd.
And then, in that walk, mustered up the courage to just completely go at Glossman. And basically just be like, oh yeah, you're a fraud. Everything you did was wrong and illegal, and these people don't know anything, and you've been working with it, and you destroyed my store, and you're tied to everything bad.
Yeah. So, like, before that, Glossman does, like, start off his press conference and basically is like, you know, someone throws out, like, are you going to run for mayor? And he kind of plays it down like, no, that's not something I'm going to do. And
even though it sounds exactly like something he was going to do.
Right. And then he brings up the wit's end's going to continue to stay closed. And then Bart yells from the back in my notes, because, of course, we understand the placement of people in this show because it is so well designed. And he's like, why'd you hire thugs to vandalize the Electric Palace?
Yeah. Yeah, why don't you tell them about the time you hired thugs to vandalize the Electric Palace? And Glossman does a really good job of not, like being like, oh, this is preposterous, like, what are you saying?
Right.
And slowly, the crowd is like, wait a minute, what? And then Bart keeps talking.
And Glossman's still doing a good job of maintaining control of the situation.
Mm-hmm. He tries to redirect it back to Dale Jacobs' question, is like, no, like, this is, you know,
let's jump to someone, like,
serious.
Reliable.
Yeah.
So he talks about him conspiring with Blackgaard to get Tom Riley kicked out. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, all right, let's leave this line of questioning. You guys all know Bart, he's deranged. Like, let's talk to someone sensible. And Dale Jacobs is like, I just received word that a man called Jellyfish is in custody and that you and Blackgaard have been implicated. And Glossman's like, all further questions are going to have to be for my legal counsel. Bye, guys.
Yep. Time to go. He just completely folds and just poof.
But in the perfect way. He's so good.
He stammers and he's like, because it's the thing that they do really good is he does the thing that politicians do where they deny it completely until they admit everything. And when he comes to the moment where he knows he's going to have to admit everything, he's like, I'm just not going to talk. It's time for me to leave.
Yeah. And that is his final appearance in this episode and basically in Adventures in Odyssey.
Does he come back at any point? Does he come back in Blackgaard's Revenge?
No. He does show up on album 50. But that is it. He's got one more episode after this.
Interesting. I'm actually kind of intrigued to see what he does in that episode.
Yeah.
Is it just him dying?
I don't know. But I mean, the thing is, like, he's always on the table as someone they can pull back because he's voiced by Paul McCusker.
Yeah,
exactly. But like the reason it was interesting listening to an interview or like a conversation between McCusker and Lawler about this stuff. That's on the AIO Club, and I would recommend to people if they want to listen to that and are already subscribed. But McCusker's just talking about like how frustrated he was being cast as Glossman, which we've talked about a little bit in the past. Like, he is phenomenal at it, but he is so bothered because he was just like, I was initially just pulled in to do a scratch track for it, and then they kind of blindsided me and ended up like
making him a main character.
Well, so he was just supposed to do the scratch track, and they were going to have someone else come in and actually record the episode audio, and then they ended up using him in the episode audio. That's in Recollections, where he's just Mr. Glossman. And so as retribution, he and Chuck Bolte named the character Philip after Phil Lawler.
Wow.
While Phil was away. They were like,
amazing.
well, you're gonna force me into being this character who's like a big player in Odyssey, then I'm naming him Philip.
Yeah.
And so like I genuinely feel like listening to that conversation, McCusker's problem is not necessarily that like he doesn't think it's a good performance or whatnot, but he's basically just like, I only have the one voice.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do voices. So I'm playing it, like, smarmier, but it's still me, and I just, like, you get the feeling that he just doesn't like the fact that his voice is forever tied to this villain.
This incredibly, like, very real-to-life, sinister, entrenched bureaucrat villain.
So well written and so unredeemed, and that will be forever. Anytime Paul McCusker talks, listeners will go,
Glossman?
wait, it's just Philip Glossman.
Yeah.
And so like and I honestly, like, I don't know that that's entirely the case. Like, I don't think when he does like his hi, I'm Paul McCusker, executive producer of Adventures in Odyssey, that he sounds that Glossman-y.
No.
But his normal speaking voice is very much Glossman, and I think, yeah, it does. I understand from like a control perspective, having that tied to you forever could be annoying, but also it's so good.
Yeah.
And I do like the kind of humor of like, oh yes, this unredeemed character is voiced by the executive producer of this show, like one of the driving forces behind it for all these years.
Yeah, that's so
whereas like
unfortunate.
Phil Lawler gets to play like Dale Jacobs, a respectable person.
Yeah, and only sometimes.
Right. Whereas, yeah, McCusker is just forever locked into this character, and it's his only recurring character. Like, he has other people that he does in an episode here and there, but like his one ongoing character is good friend of the show, Philip Glossman.
Gotta love him.
Phil Lawler Glossman.
Oh.
But that's a wrap on Glossman, and I'm gonna miss him.
Yeah, I know. He was such a good bad guy. I mean, as much as it would be kind of gross for them to bring him back, I would absolutely love to.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, there's the problem now is like, you can't, like, basically none of New Odyssey references stuff before album 50. Like, and definitely not before like album 30, because it's just like you're asking too much
For continuity's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not a show that holds great continuity. Although, like, I'm sure
There have been times, though.
Yeah,
We've talked about it on
they
the
do.
show.
There's a point in The Ties That Bind where Maxwell is referenced. So like they do occasionally dip into that well.
Yeah, so at this point, has Jellyfish started working with the police yet? Have we gotten that scene yet?
Right. So that is our next scene.
Yeah.
Is
Jellyfish kind of being like, okay, so I gave you guys all this information. It's Jellyfish. Is it Jason and the NSA agent?
Yes.
Okay.
And so yeah, he's like, and actually I think Jack might be there as well. But yeah, so he mentions like, you know, trying to get a reduced sentence for cooperating, which is how Del Jacobs kind of got that scoop. They also discussed the fact that all of Jellyfish's writings are on, like, he does have on the laptop, which is a weird kind of hole that I'm having trouble tracking with.
They just copied it instead of taking it.
What are you saying? What?
Are you having issues with the fact that there's data on the computer that they already took?
I'm talking about, like, last episode, they used the infrared, and they got only Bovril stuff.
Oh.
So, did they accidentally grab info from the wrong computer? Or did Jellyfish did Jellyfish back up his files to a floppy disk, like he had initially... like they were initially pitching to him, but he didn't want to do that because he was afraid that, like, then Blackgaard would see the stuff. Mm-hmm. And we didn't really get that resolved, but I thought, like, the resolution was his stuff was just overwritten by Bovril's.
No, I just presumed he just did a slide thing with a floppy disk.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Or we're to assume that last episode they truly did mix things up and get Bovril's laptop instead of Jellyfish's.
Yeah, which would make sense because presumably they're the exact same laptop.
Yeah, I that was not my impression was always like Bovril's was like a computer and Jellyfish just had the laptop, but yeah, it's not super clear and it doesn't really matter, but it was it was a thing.
It was a thing.
And then
so basically he's like the whole juxtaposition is that Jellyfish is working with the NSA to bring down Blackgaard so he gets a reduced prison sentence.
Well, but they bring up the fact that the hospital security has Glossman and Bart in custody. Yeah. And that Shaw is stationing people around Wits End, but this is when Jellyfish reveals, like, oh, like, be careful, Blackgaard's planning to blow up the tunnel. Mm-hmm. And then they realize that Jack isn't in the police station anymore.
Yeah. Well, they also basically call out the fact that Bart basically helped take down Glossman even though he's going to go down with him.
Yes, which is very funny.
It's hilarious, and it's also like, this is probably peak Rathbone in the sense that, like, this is the most of a redemption story that these guys get, is just basically taking down the bad guys but also going down with them, but also thinking that somehow they're going to be exempt from it when they're definitely not going to be.
Yeah. Well, and it's very much they're doing it more unwittingly, but this is also the move that Maxwell pulls in first arc of Blackgaard, where he kind of bailed.
Maxwell turns on Blackgaard to take him down because he knows what he's doing is wrong and he knows that he's crossed a line, but he also knows that, one, he might die, and two, if he doesn't die, he's definitely going to jail.
Right. And he does, and so now we're getting that for Bart and Rodney as well.
Yeah.
And so, we then...
So then we're at Wits End, right?
Yeah.
That's where the end of the episode happens.
And so
all of it is there.
So it starts out with Blackgaard walking through, like, the front door at Wits End, like the classic...
Yeah, door open, sound, the bell
of just, like, all of Odyssey.
Yeah. It's so good, and he comes in, walks in, starts talking. He's like, Jellyfish, where's Jellyfish? And he starts talking to Bovril.
Yeah. And
they start realizing that things have gone awry, so he sends Bovril off with the mineral in the van. And yeah, I mean, atmospherically, it's incredibly eerie, because, like you said, I think that they were very intentional about, like, make it sound like a bell. Make it sound like it's empty.
Right.
Make it sound,
he is walking into the Wits End that we always experience, but there is no one there. Mm-hmm. It is just him.
Yep.
And it's, like Bob Luttrell really knocking it out of the park with that maneuver.
Yeah, no, it was so good.
And so we then, he reveals to Bovril that he's going to blow up the tunnel in case they missed any of the mineral.
Yeah.
But also just kind of as vengeance for everything that Wit has done. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he's going to follow in the car after Bavro leaves in the van, which we then jump to the van driving past Bernard and Eugene.
Eugene
saying, like,
out.
we gotta go follow this thing. Bernard's like, nah, I got this. I siphoned the gas. And Eugene yells, Mr. Walton, you're a genius.
And it's like, about time you realized.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's such a good, like, he's a hero, and he did it in the most folksy way he could, which is siphoning gas with his mouth.
Yep. And then Blackgaard kind of starts to walk out towards his car and realizes, like, oh, we're surrounded. The van's not going. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, fools, come after me in the tunnel if you dare.
Yeah. Yeah, very...
Just perfect villain monologue.
Mm-hmm. Come after me in the tunnel if you dare. And the acoustics for the tunnel is so good.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear the dirt. I don't know how you hear dirt, but you can hear it.
You can hear the dirt.
No, it's, yeah. As much smack as I could talk on this episode, it is such, like, this is the best Odyssey villains has ever gotten.
Yeah.
And, this is an epic moment. So basically, he runs off into the tunnel, trying to escape the back way, right? And this is when he runs into Jack, or is that later?
So
I think something happens before we.
So they cut to the outside,
yeah.
And Tom's there, and Jason's like, I'm pretty sure Jack is inside.
Oh, no.
And that's like it.
What we missed was, so the reason that he flees is because you hear a ton of police sirens pull into Wits End.
Yeah.
Do we say that?
Oh yeah, I said that Wits End. Blackgaard sticks his head out and sees that Wits End is surrounded.
Okay,
that's the point I was making.
Tons of police cars.
Yep.
Presumably, like I'm imagining the NSA has like half the Coast Guard just surrounded.
The Coast Guard?
Not the Coast Guard.
National Guard?
National Guard. Coast Guard would be on bodies of water. Odyssey, notoriously landlocked.
Except for Trickle Lake. And so it's now this final confrontation between Jack as our wit stand-in and Blackgaard. Mm-hmm. Blackgaard's like, I see you must have found the escape hatch in the woods. And Jack's like, yes, I did while I was walking around. And it's like, oh, this is going to be very important during Novacom with Erica Colburn.
Yeah.
Is the fact that the tunnel opens up in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And so Blackgaard's like, well, you fool, like, I'm just going to use you as a hostage. And Jack's like, no, I don't care. I'm prepared for death.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? I'm not here to save the world. I'm not here for Odyssey or even Wits End. I'm here for you, for your soul.
So, if I can take a moment to talk about this scene really well. So basically, the beauty of the scene is Jack comes down with the absolute purest of intentions.
Yep. And
comes face to face with Blackgaard, who we then learn literally sold his soul to Satan. And this is Jack is somebody who has been a literal prayer warrior this entire time. Like, it's almost like, Michelangelo and it's very C.S. Lewis. It's like, screw tape letters, like angel fighting demon situation. But he comes down and Blackgaard then turns it on him and he's like, oh, you're just a martyr. Like, look at you, you guy, you're just gonna die because of what you believe in. And, you're so noble. And Jack's like, no, I'm here for you. I'm here for your soul.
Yep.
Like, it's not too late.
That's the only thing that matters right now. Not money or power or computer programs or viruses or world terrorism. It all comes down to your soul. Why don't you put down the detonator, give yourself up, so that you'll have time to redeem your soul?
The flaw in your proposal is that you assume my soul is redeemable. It isn't. I auctioned it off years ago.
Then you sold your soul cheap. Your soul is worth the life of Jesus Christ. To give it to anyone else is an incredible waste.
Yep.
It's a really powerful interaction.
Yeah, it's so interesting the way that they do this, because Blackgaard is shown verbally being completely resistant the entire time, but sonically, when it becomes evident that he has the Roku virus and that he's going to die and that he's going to blow the tunnel up anyway,
Yep.
it's like he's not so like that's in that moment he transitions from being so completely evil to being so completely broken.
Yeah.
You know? And that's why I just so in Christianity, there's always the white knight comes in to save the soul idea. And it's very important, I think, especially within the context of the Bible and a lot of imagery, like how we think about God. And I would say that my only frustration with this portrayal is just kind of the aftermath, in the sense where Jack kind of throws up his hands and he's like, well, I did what I could do.
Yeah, right. I think this exchange between Jack and Blackgaard is like nearly flawless. Like they nail it. It is this back and forth kind of, verbal sparring, and Jack's just like completely calm-headed, and you can see Blackgaard become more and more agitated and just kind of flailing about.
I would be very interested in wondering how much method acting I'm so bad.
Earl Bowen?
Yeah, Earl Bowen did in voicing Jack.
Oh no, Earl Bowen's
Bowen
Blackgaard.
Who did Jack?
Jack is Alan
Young.
Alan Young.
Yep,
there it is.
I'm very interested because the way that his voice comes off sonically is like eerily realistic.
Yeah.
In the sense of like,
so grounded.
Can you hear the Holy Spirit over an audio drama? I think I can, and I think I did.
And so right, and Blackgaard at this point's like, no, like you've missed the point. There is no. There's no way for me to continue. I can't give up. I am dying. I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, well, because Jack's whole thing is basically like, give yourself up, just turn yourself in, go to jail, whatever, do the thing, give yourself a chance to be redeemed. And Blackgaard's like, nah, man, I'm dying anyway. I'm so far gone, there's no way.
And he goes, I suggest you run for your life.
Yeah.
And Jack's like, you don't want to kill me. And he's like, oh, you fool. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Goodbye, Jack Allen.
Yep.
And then the explosion happens. And it
so
is
so good.
Oh, it is. That exchange is incredible. And I love Jack not backing down. Him being like, I'm not going to let you, just
Could you imagine
throw
having
you
somebody saying, I'm
this.
coming for your soul?
Yeah.
Like, oh!
Oh, yeah. It is. It's such a powerful moment in this story. And I like that this is what
I like that
the
this is what it comes
series
down
hinges
to.
on.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, hey, the point of all this is like, because with Novacom, it's like, we thwarted an evil corporation. But with this, it's like, well, there wasn't an evil corporation. We beat the villain, but we didn't beat the villain. Like, we tried to redeem the villain.
And the villain succumbed to his own.
Right. He fully bought into his own tragedy.
Yeah.
And
I think that's one of the things that I like, one of the reasons that it brings me so much discomfort. And maybe makes me even think that this episode isn't good, because the truth is, it's an excellent episode. This episode is amazing. But it's so uncomfortable to come so intimate with somebody that is so deeply evil and broken.
And that is talked about
afterwards.
Yeah.
So basically, after the explosion, Jack is thrown clear. He's okay, but Blackgaard it's not.
Right. So Jason, there's this moment where he says goodbye, Jack Allen. We cut outside, and Jason's like, I am going in there. And then we hear the explosion from Jason's perspective. And it's him yelling Jack's name and it echoes over the music.
Yeah,
and it is
so good,
beautiful.
I get this idea that like for some reason it's a hatch, and he's like, or it's like basically he's opening the door and then gets hit with an explosion blast, and he's like, Jack, and then he runs in after him.
Yeah, it is. It's so well crafted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and then we cut away and come back to Sam finding Jack in the woods, and his first moment is, where's Blackgaard? What happened? Like, it's Blackgaard is still the concern on his mind here.
Yeah.
And so we find out that the tunnel collapsed, but Wits End's mostly okay. And Jack remembers the detonator going off. He's fine. He remembers it going off, and then just him waking up outside, and is like, well, how'd you make it? He's just like, by the grace of God. Like, there's nothing I did.
It gets very much like teleportation, yeah.
Right. Well, and we know that the tunnel comes out in the middle of the woods. So it's not even necessarily teleportation as much as just like protection as he escaped the thing. Like, you could read it as something purely divine, but there is also a read of it that is more grounded, and I like that the show gives you that flexibility there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
And so, yeah,
so then we get,
so there's this back and forth between
Jack and Bernard, right?
Well, no, because there's Jack is like, he had the virus. And Bovril overhears that and is like, oh, I could have, like, no, like, that he shouldn't have had to have died. I could have made an antidote from the mineral in the tunnels. And Jack has this just like bone shattering line of just like, yeah, but that, like, I could have, Bobber's like, I could have saved him. Jack says, it wouldn't have saved him. It just would have kept him alive.
Yeah. That was a line that was interesting to me in his take on it. And I don't think that he's wrong, but I think it's another instance of it just sitting so poorly with me because, like, it's so disheartening to know that even if he were to stay alive, he would still be so broken and so far gone. Not too far gone, but
right.
But
well, yeah. And then we get to the right where you can tell once again the show is so clearly pulling from C.S. Lewis stuff. But it's this Bernard and Jack interaction, and Bernard's just like, I don't understand why he did all this. Like, how could anyone be this evil? And Jack's like, I know. It's hard to understand how a mind like Dr. Blackgaard's worked. I'd hoped to help him change it, one last chance. But a soul so corrupted, so saturated in evil, can only come to one end without Jesus. It's destined for the final conflict, an eternity without God.
Yeah.
And that's the part that is the hardest to swallow. The line of, like, a soul so corrupted, so saturated in evil can only come to one end without Jesus. We can all only come to one end without Jesus. The state of Blackgaard's soul, and just like when they're in the tunnel and they're talking about things, and Blackgaard's like, I auctioned off my soul years ago. Like, that's not a literal occurrence. That is not a literal occurrence. It's not something Blackgaard literally believes, but it is him spitting in the face of what Jack believes.
Yeah.
And just saying, like, basically, like, I only care about myself. And, I am... it's... None of this is... there's nothing you can do to save me. But, like, we have to believe that no one is beyond saving.
Exactly.
Otherwise, everything I believe falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm okay that we don't get redemption for Blackgaard.
Me too.
But it has to be on the table.
Yeah.
And the way Jack
So if I could...
is talking about it almost makes it seem like, no, like, he was too far gone. And then he does have, like, that, like, he, you know, his soul's so corrupted, so saturated in evil, you know, could only come to one end. And you're like, oh, shoot. Like, he's saying, like, you know, Blackgaard was destined to an eternity without God. However you choose to interpret that.
Mm-hmm.
But he then does say, without Jesus. Like, there was still a hope. But it's like, but all of us are destined to that without Jesus. So it's like, I don't know why... It's a hard thing that Odyssey is trying to do, and I understand that. That like they're like, we have to hammer home how evil Blackgaard is, and we also still have to be like, but everyone can be redeemed. But they don't toe that line in a way that I'm really comfortable with. It seems, because it just seems like, especially if you're listening to this as a child, they don't, they're stuck in this place of being like, we have to condemn Blackgaard and say that he was evil, and we also have to show he can be redeemed. So the choice that we make is that we say like, oh yes, there was a chance, but like, he was probably gone anyways.
So, if I may,
yes,
please. Let me just put on my Bible school cap here and talk to you about basically. So, a lot of Christianity and a lot of theology is based around the idea of judgment happens when we die immediately, and the status of your soul when you die determines your afterlife, right? So either you go through life and you collect the Christian chip and you get into heaven, or you go through life and you don't collect the Christian chip for whatever reason and you don't go to heaven. Right. And if you collect the Christian chip and you are a good Christian, then there's all the, you know, revelation stuff about the crowns and rewards and things like that, and there's no need to get into that. And the thing that I kind of like about this, but also am deeply uncomfortable with it, is that my personal belief, and this is something that you may want to cut from the show, I don't know.
No, I knew we were going to go here, and I'm comfortable having it in. This is where there's nuance to theology, and the views of Andrew are his own. But, like, I still want to be able to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sorry if this bothers people on the people who are listening, but like, whatever.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So fire away.
So basically, and this is not something that I concocted on my own. Like, this is actually a very strong theology that has a lot of academic support. Especially within the Eastern Church, is the idea that everybody will die and come face to face with Jesus Christ and be given the opportunity to accept him. Right? And obviously, you know, just saying that, I know, like, I can hear the butt clench of some of the listeners, because it even saying that, as somebody that grew up in an evangelical household and very conservative parents, they don't even necessarily, like, they don't agree with me. My dad doesn't agree with me. But what that does, and the thing that makes it so disturbing for me, is that the only people that go to hell then are the people that look Jesus in the eye and say, no, man, I don't want to do that. And that's what we get from Blackgaard. What we get from Blackgaard is looking Jesus in the eye, whether it was 30 years ago when he actually, you know, sold his soul or whatever.
I don't think that's meant to be taken.
No.
Let me just once again hammer that home.
No, but, or, you know, metaphorically, just the idea that he looks he doesn't ignore God being there. He looks at God and says, no, I want something else. And that's what I think is so hard, and I think that that's the thing that the show is grappling with. But I think that what it's also doing is it's pointing out the pigeonholes of certain conservative ideologies and the idea that... I was thinking about this at work the other day. Who is held accountable for the people that are not saved? Because there's no talk in the Bible about when we get to heaven, all the Christians, like all the people that don't go to heaven, like those count as points against us or stuff like that. They talk about the rejoice and things like that. No, at the end of the day, who is held accountable for who goes to heaven and who doesn't? That would be the judge, right? They're in charge of it. And the people that make the decisions in the seat of judgment, right? Can you imagine sitting before the judgment throne of God, him being like, don't you see, this whole time you were just missing out? And for whatever reason, whether you grew up in an area which the church was not what it should be, it was not like Christ, or you grew up in an entirely Islam nation, and so you only ever knew the one thing, you had an idea of Jesus, but it was never preached to you in that respect, whatever, all of those things, all of those different types of people, they all are united at the judgment seat of Christ. And I cannot fathom them looking at God and saying, I'm so sorry, I didn't get it. I get it now. I love you now. I want to be in this relationship with you. And God pulling that, metaphorical lever and being like, nope.
Yeah.
Because where is the never-ending forgiveness of Christ there? And obviously you can get into the idea of, okay, so Andrew, if you're going to say that, then who gets into heaven and who doesn't? To which I would say, that's not the point of Christianity. That's not it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I mean, it's such a loaded conversation and a hard thing to wrestle with.
Yeah. No.
And but like, right, I do the idea of, so like, if you want to know what I'm thinking about, if you want to hear somebody say everything that I said, but much better with all the biblical backing, read the book Sinners in the Hands of a Loving God. And if you do, tweet at me because I freaking love that book. It's amazing. I'll throw a link in the description just for you.
It's not long. It's a real easy read, and if anything, if it doesn't change anything about what you believe, it'll give you a fresh perspective, and I think that that's very helpful.
Hey, it never hurts to learn more, even if you don't wind up on that side.
Exactly. That's why I go to the school where I do.
And like the thing that like I would say is the more mainstream evangelical interpretation of what you just said is like everyone has a chance on Earth. Mm-hmm. And this episode is very much portraying Blackgaard's chance.
Yeah.
Like he comes, face to face with Jack as our
wit as God.
Right. And
the transitive property of wit.
And Jack's just like, look, like here is your opportunity. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you're going down. Like, I'm going to go down with you. You don't want that, but like also this is your chance. Mm-hmm. And Blackgaard looks him dead in the eyes and says, no, that's not, like, my decision has already been made, and blows everything up.
Have you ever been in a position where you were Blackgaard or Jack, in that sense, where either you were somebody who was, like, really gunning for somebody that was on the brink, or you were the person who, like, stared Jesus in the eye and told him go away?
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever had that direct
maybe not quite that, yeah,
because also there's such a finality to this.
Yeah,
like I have definitely had moments where of like confrontation where then the person was still like, nah, I'm gonna keep on doing my thing. But I haven't had any where like that was the conversation and then I never spoke to the person again. Like those conversations all happened with people who I continue to be in relationship with. Yeah, and so it doesn't have that finality. Or like if we did drift apart relationally, it wasn't as a result of that interaction.
Conflict,
It was just as a result of time passing. Yeah. But I haven't had any instance where it's like, I lay everything out and they're like, no, I reject that. And because of that, I reject you and you will never talk to me again. Mm-hmm. Like, I haven't had that experience.
I don't think I've had quite that experience, but it's been close and it's not fun.
Yeah, I imagine so. It is... it's brutal in this episode.
Did we finish covering everything in the episode?
There's an outerlude, which is, I guess, an outro. I don't. Well,
an outerlude.
No, well, it's an outerlude because they then go to the Chris wrap up, which
is that talk about. Would that
I don't
be
think
an epilogue.
Yeah, maybe it's kind of an epilogue.
There you go.
But it is. Yeah, it's once again Mort on the radio going, Mort.
Mort.
Going, Tom's recall has been postponed because of this current stuff, and Wits End should be open again in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Which is the perfect note to end on
it. Yeah. It's kind of like a to be continued situation where it's like, it's so nice because what it does is it pulls back to the greater universe and it gives that kind of like in movies where it like pans out from the house and like you see the greater town situation.
Yep.
Like, it's exactly that.
And this was in the script where Odyssey ends, period. That was still how the episode went out. Of like,
that would be it.
Right. We're panning out across all of Odyssey and over the narration we hear like, and Wits End will open next week. And it's just kind of like things will go on. Life will return to normal. But like the story has ended.
Yeah.
And so it's a great end to this arc, and I think it's also a good end to Odyssey, but obviously I'm happy it's not where Odyssey ended.
Yeah. At least yet.
Yeah. And so, some closing notes. It's just such a bummer that we don't get any Maxwell in this episode.
Yeah.
Like,
it's deeply unfortunate.
The idea that what we covered last week, The Last Resort, is Maxwell's final appearance in Odyssey. And we also don't get Connie on this arc, which is, or like in this episode and in the last couple, like she's kind of dropped off, which is also sad. But also it's a really well crafted episode. And while I don't love how some of the that last speech that Jack gives still sits uncomfortably with me. Not necessarily in the words that are being said, but in the way it's being said and the way that it can be read. But like we acknowledged, it's a tough thing to pull off. And then the episode itself goes out on like an extended Chris outro that essentially has an altar call in it. Which I think was a really interesting and cool choice to put that here rather than in The Time Has Come. Because like, right, it's cool that this arc does have, Eugene accepting and Blackgaard denying.
Yeah. No, it's and I was thinking about that too, just all of these individual character arcs that we've gotten throughout this whole thing, they all end up pretty nicely, right? Yeah. So like Eugene starts off ill-equipped, becomes equipped, becomes part of the reason that they get taken down. Jason comes in with the wrong mentality, starts to suffer the repercussions, then has the conversation, reconciles with Jack, and comes back around.
Reconciles with Jack, but doesn't disband his child army, which is the whole reason they were at odds.
Yeah.
Especially for an episode that, like, has the police involved.
Yeah. We still have...
I get that we wanted
100 children swarming a full-grown convict.
Right. And they like the idea of Sam and Billy being the ones to uproot Rodney and Jellyfish.
Yeah.
Which makes sense from a story perspective. It's a good conclusion. It would have felt weird if that was police officers that we didn't know doing that. But
However,
it is also a bummer
child.
when we think about the fact that there is a child army.
There are 2 child armies, let's not forget.
Right, the Bones of Wrath being the other one.
Oh yeah, there's a whole thing where Rodney's like, our gangs, they really shouldn't fight each other. Maybe we should work together. To which I was like, how is that going to happen? Right. Also, it then immediately gets countered with, nah, Rodney, you're going to go to jail.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, I don't think he does. But,
No.
The other interesting note just in the context of this that blew my mind. So the next episode to air, which aired a mere 3 weeks after this one, is Love is in the Air. Mm-hmm. You could not go further.
Yeah.
From what we're on.
Wait, I thought the next episode was it Hidden in My Heart.
No. Love is in the Air is the next broadcast episode. They might have switched around the order on the album.
Okay.
But Love is in the Air comes after this. And it is insane to me. And also, a good thing that I feel like would be fun to talk about, which I don't know that we've ever fully addressed this, but the inspiration for us doing this show was an episode of the podcast Good Christian Fun in which they talked about Love is in the Air.
Oh! I didn't know that was the episode that they talked about. Okay.
That is the episode, or that 2-parter is what they are covering in that episode. That is a podcast that I have had mostly positive relationship, but some stuff where it's had moments where I'm just like, the quality's not there, or I'm having a really tough time with this theologically. But like we were talking about earlier, that thing of like, expose yourself to ideas that are not your own, because like that can be really good and is like a nice perspective to have, and it's good to understand the people you disagree with. Exactly.
Well, and honestly, if I can sell this even harder, it's just ignorance does not sit well with humbleness, right? It's really hard to be meek, blessed are the meek, blessed are the humble, blessed are the poor in spirit. Like, it's really hard to be all of those things when you sit in an echo chamber and you shout about how right you are.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's my biggest frustration with the church as a whole, is just only that, do I think that I have it all figured out? Heck to the no. Am I probably 90% wrong? Probably. Maybe. I don't know. I won't know until I get to heaven and talk to God. Like, I don't know how anybody else can operate with any more confidence than that, only to the degree of like, all I know to be true is what God has revealed to me through his son, Jesus Christ, and through his word. And that's what my faith rests on.
Yeah.
And that is, obviously there's a lot more to it, like how you read the Bible and things like that, personal experience, but that's what it all comes back to. And I think it's incredibly important to try and maintain that humble attitude, because I think that that's what a lot of the New Testament is talking about. Like, I've never seen Paul be like, oh, no, it's okay that you guys all believe different things about God. Like, I mean, he actually does say that. And he's like, but the whole point is that you're united under the gospel. Like, the whole point is that we are one church. We are one body. And despite all of the differences, we've got this, like, one God and, like, 3 commandments to rally around,
Yeah. Yeah. So that is a plug for Good Christian Fun.
And Christianity, I suppose.
Yeah. I will put a link in our description for that episode of GCF talking about the Love is in the Air. For if you want to like take the next
step. If you like this podcast,
arc.
You probably would like it.
Yeah. If you're one of the people who gets bothered by us being quote unquote edgy, it's not the show for you.
Yeah.
But if you like what we do here, that show and that episode in particular is the reason we exist. And so, yeah, give it a listen. That's where we hit chronologically.
There you go.
And so,
excellent point.
That link will be below. Yeah, we've kind of wrapped up on this. We're also going to take this time to do our kind of wrap up on Blackgaard here at the end. Even though we have 2 episodes after this, they're a nice kind of afternote. This is where I think this is where the show has Blackgaard ending. We have his death here. We have his rejection of God here. And we also have what was initially the end of the show here. Not to mention a ton of notes in the official guide about all of the different stuff that they had talked about doing in Darkness Before Dawn.
Anything you would like to...
Oh, I mean, I want to talk about all of it.
Okay, cool.
This is going to be a long epilogue.
Okay.
I guess the you want to just take a moment to walk through all of Blackgaard big picture?
Sure.
So we can just track with this?
Sure.
Things like technically start in episode 19, Recollections, even though we hadn't talked about that. That is Wit purchasing Wit's End, the Fillmore Recreation Center. And one of the other, that's Glossman's introduction, and it's also the Webster development firm trying to purchase the Fillmore Recreation Center. Webster development firm is a Blackgaard-owned company.
Oh, that's right.
So right from the get-go, potentially for the reasons of this mineral, potentially for other things, like we never get a clear idea of why Blackgaard and Wit are so intertwined. So he wants to purchase this place. Wit ends up getting it.
I would say that because they're the antithesis of each other in the same way that, like, Wit is universally present in all things. I feel like Blackgaard is also universally present in all things. They're just opposites.
Yeah, that's fair. So then we get in the in our first album, in the Sinister Scheme, Daring Deeds, Sinister Schemes, we get Blackgaard coming to Odyssey to go after this computer program called Applesauce that we had developed for the government. He has Maxwell as kind of his cohort joining him, but by the end, Maxwell has turned on Blackgaard. Wit destroys Applesauce, and Blackgaard leaves town with plausible deniability for everything that happened.
Yep. And that's the first, 7 episodes?
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's all of Daring Deeds. And then we have kind of these interlude episodes. We've got One Bad Apple, where the Edgebiter Chemical Company dumps a bunch of chemicals that poison Tom's apples.
Yeah.
Which is a very self-contained episode that then later kind of matters in Tom for Mayor. I mean, very much matters in that. And then we go to Chicago, where Connie and Wit stumble upon this case where a computer has been stolen, a government computer. They find out Blackgaard is behind it, and then Maxwell helps Connie and Wit get it for revenge.
Yep.
And Wit destroys the software on this government computer. So at this point, Blackgaard is still going after computer stuff. It's no longer the this applesauce, but it's now another military computer, and that was so that's kind of Blackgaard's, hey, I'm still here, I still kind of matter.
So the homecoming is then what? Is Maxwell coming back?
Yeah, Maxwell comes back,
Apology
asks everyone
tour.
for forgiveness. Everyone but Tom is on board with that.
The Rathbone of Contention, the unanimously decided between the two of us the worst episode of the Blackgaard saga.
Correct, which is the episode in which Bart gets the Electric Palace.
Yep.
He gets Eugene to work with him to help put it together, whatever. But it's in the ground where Blackgaard's castle used to be, and Bart is talking on the phone with an unknown voice that we can presume is Blackgaard. And this whole thing was funded by the Webster development firm, which is Blackgaard backed, as we talked about. We then get an episode that is nearly as bad, Double Trouble, in which Edwin moves back to town.
Yeah.
That's the episode.
Yep. Edwin moves back to town and is like, everybody hates me because
he moves to town for the first time.
Yeah.
But Then Tom for Mayor happens, where Glossman shows up to do more investigations about the chemical spill. Tom, all of this, everything Glossman's doing is stuff that Mayor Bill Jenkins is somewhat aware of, and he's somewhat in on this, is talking to an unknown voice. We can maybe, again, assume that this is Blackgaard. And while he initially was agreeing to go along with things, he's then like, okay, things have gone too far. I'm stepping down as mayor.
Yeah.
And then Tom, being spurred on by Glossman and what he's doing, runs for mayor and is cleared of that scandal and becomes mayor. Then we have Name Not a Number, wherein Blackgaard goes off, or Tasha is working.
We have the Roku virus stuff.
Runs into Blackgaard, and Jason goes to save her, and also finds Blackgaard.
Blackgaard
meets
supposedly
him,
dies.
Gets the run in. Blackgaard dies. We find out that Blackgaard's running everything behind the scenes, but doesn't know about. But Jason doesn't know about that. Blackgaard being still alive, and Blackgaard doesn't seem to know about Whit's involvement in TA-418 at all during that, which is weird. So yeah, and then we hit Darkness Before Dawn, and Glossman takes control of the tunnel at Whit's End. This is all the groundwork that is laid for Blackgaard to show up. But
he shows up in the return. Right?
He does show up in the turn. His whole and then we get into what we've been covering. It's just it's weird to track his thing of like he's initially going to audit, like he wants the Fillmore Recreation Center before Whit does. So that's weird.
Yeah.
And then Whit does get it, and then he's going after Applesauce, which is a program Whit has. And then he's going after another military computer, and then he bankrolls the Electric Palace, and also this campaign against Tom is also like him pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And then and then it's all this virus stuff, and then he dies in that. He claims to be injected, I didn't actually get injected with the virus, just a chemical thing, but then we find out later he does have the virus.
Yeah.
So was there still some residual in the needle? What happened there? And all of this builds to him coming back. It's funny. I think wherein listening to Novacom only enhanced my love of that series, I think listening to Blackgaard did somewhat undermine it a bit for me.
Yeah, because it showed off all the inconsistencies by listening to it back to back, even because they didn't air that way.
Right. It is the thing with Blackgaard is that I think it is so much better than Novacom thematically, and so much worse plot-wise.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't dislike any of the episodes, really.
No.
Like it's still good and worth listening, but it was interesting. I was like, our complaint the whole way through Novacom was like, what is the morale? What
is his modum operandi?
What is, all through Novacom, we were kind of where's the morality of this? What is Odyssey trying to say? They're just trying to tell a story, aren't they? And with this, I feel like they know what they're trying to say, and they're doing a good job of that, and the story is kind of lost. And so it's interesting to see both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
And so that's a weird inconsistency thing where it's we're always pointing to something bigger, but the bigger thing doesn't then point back to all the previous stuff. It's just kind of and here's the big thing, right? And it's well...
And that's why it felt anticlimactic.
Right, we weren't really hinting towards anything. And then, in addition to this, which I do not have the time to get into, nor the expertise, we have all of the nonsense chemistry stuff with the virus.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with the weird inconsistencies of Odyssey thing. Now let's get into the deleted stuff and my notes from the conversation between McCusker and Lawler.
Okay.
And this really hammered home the whole C.S. Lewis of it all, because they're talking about how Whit was meant to be Aslan, good but not tame. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. Because, like,
that makes sense.
I see it now.
Yeah.
And they're also talking about how, like...
But thinking about the word John Avery Whitaker and not tame in reference to a lion is very interesting.
It's really funny. And they're also talking about, like, how they were like, well, like, he needs to have money so that he can do all this stuff, but then we need to have his salvation come after that so that, like, he understands like, he has a disconnect from the money, but it's still there when he needs it. And, like, all of this just, like, where I'm like, oh, wow, I'm really seeing through the Matrix on how you plotted out Wit as a character. And they talk about the fact that the pronunciation of Blackgaard, which is, so Blackgaard is is like a very Shakespearean thing that they were pulling from of like, you know, someone who is corrupt. And so they then switched the U to an A and kind of like, hey, we're going to switch things up, not make this quite as obvious and give it kind of a Norwegian spin. And then there was not a decision on how to pronounce it until Walker Edmonston said it as Blackgaard. And like that became the thing. Because we talked about that really early on. How are we going to say this? And why is there so much in those first couple episodes? Everyone's on a different page and then they kind of settle into something going forward. And it's because they literally didn't coach them on anything. Like, it's so early in the run of the show that it's like, oh, it makes sense that, like, how much of this stuff they were just figuring out on the fly. Whereas when Novacom, they're like, we know what we're doing. And so I just, that made me so happy. And then yeah, this is the horrible thing. So they talk about why they made Blackgaard a child psychologist.
Oh no.
And this is a direct quote from Phil Lawler, who I already had complex
by saying that I plan
feelings.
on getting my doctorate in childhood psychology. I am fully intending on doing that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so this is, and from now on we will call you Blackgaard and I'll be Wit.
Interesting. That kind
It's the turning point for our series.
Yeah.
We reveal that Andrew was the villain all along, and that I'm actually God.
Shoot, if Dylan's God, I'm screwed.
It's so if you want to hear him say this, the video is on the AIO Club. It's probably worth listening to, but he says, Phil Lawler says, psychology is the new secular religion, and the danger of psychology is infiltrating the church. And that is what he is. That is the motivation between Blackgaard being a child psychologist. He was like, none of this, we didn't really get into this. None of that was like, that's all very much me and not stuff that's on the surface. But like, that's why we made that a detail.
Why? Okay. I get it. So, to defend their point, right? Psychology can be seen as something threatening to the faith because
it's a study of the mind.
It's a study of the mind, and it can be viewed as a way of forming an identity that's completely apart from Christ, which makes sense.
Right.
I can understand why you'd be threatened by that. However, I would argue that psychology, if anything, complements Christianity a lot more than it does to do bad things. Because, so, yeah, basically, basic church things is we have power, we want to protect power, we don't like things that question that power, right? That's why we get, political leaders influencing translations and things like that. I mean, anybody who does any amount of research on the Bible and things like that can see how that's been doctored in certain instances over history and what we've done to try and counteract that. However, when we're talking about psychology, right, we are all creation. We were all made. Even if you are literal 7-day creationist, you obviously subscribe to the idea that God made the human mind.
Right. How
is understanding the human mind that God made bad for Christians?
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a really concerning take. I also would like to throw out, I don't know when that interview was recorded.
Yeah.
But, like, considering this is, like, the episodes they're talking about were written in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And our view of psychology has come so far.
Oh, yeah.
In the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It is a thing where I'm like, I hope that, and I want to leave space for Phil Lawler to have grown, but also that is a terrifying take, and I'm so glad that they only basically made mention of it at one point, and it didn't become a main point of what they were like. It didn't become a main point of their messaging, and it's a moment that shows an ability that Odyssey early on had, and I think did very well, which was like separating some of the writer's viewpoints and not letting that be what the show is about.
Yeah, not letting that drive the plot.
Like, there are definitely episodes that are like message episodes, and that are bonkers as a result. But like,
Castles and Cauldrons, I'm looking at you.
I was also gonna say 60s something.
Oh yeah, that too.
But like, I'm glad that the show isn't all that, because it easily could be, and a worse show would be. So that's kind of my 2 cents about this.
Yeah, well, and I would like to say that especially the church as a whole has become only in the last 5 years or we'll say even 8 years, embracing of mental health and things like that. Even then, there's still, large swaths of Christianity that are like,
a real
is
struggle.
mental health real? What's not? What, how do we look at this in the eyes of God? Like, how do we separate the politics from the science, and how do we separate this politics and the science from God, and all that fun stuff. So like I said, I sincerely hope, but I know people that are like this, and there is, like, I'm in school to be a Christian counselor. I want to major in childhood psychology. I know exactly what point they're arguing because I did a whole thing for it. I think it's probably the biblical counseling model. And it's so frustrating that they would take something as Christian as childhood psychology, which is hopefully, if used well, used in treating trauma in children to help them become better, more loving, more healthy adults, and twist it into something Satan-like.
Yep. Yeah.
That
is
really
bad feeling. It's really uncomfortable.
Bad feeling. I feel attacked.
Yeah.
In a way that I didn't think I was going to.
I warned you before episode that I had a bombshell.
Yep.
And I hinted at it a couple times, and yep, there's the payoff. Great, isn't it? So.
Deep sigh.
Now I'm going to run through some of the original ideas that were scripted or in planning stages but didn't actually make the show. So there was a subplot in which George Barkley was going to lead a group of parents in protest against Wits End when they found out about the unsafe materials there.
Oh. That would have been interesting and strangely tangential.
Right, exactly. Like, it's I understand why it was cut. Would have been interesting to see.
Yeah.
We get there was a version in which the Maxwell got pictures of the Bones of Wrath attacking Wits End to tie them into all this stuff. I think kind of pre the jellyfish computer ex machina, this was kind of an idea. And that he at one point, like, crawled into the rafters at the Harlequin to spy on them and ended up falling out of the rafters. And that was kind of how he was caught. I think this is all the idea before we do the computer plan, that this was kind of the whole idea there. There was an idea, which this I'm so glad they didn't do, that during Eugene's whole imagination station, when he's going back through stuff, at one point, like, so this would be after his salvation, before they get kicked out of Wits End, he goes back in, and Katrina comes along with him, and Eugene proposes, and Reverend Andrew does the ceremony.
Oh. That would make sense if they were ending the show and they wanted them to be together, but ew.
Right. But also...
Ew.
But also, there's no way...
Getting married by a computer
program works.
Yeah. Does that hold up in the court of law?
No. There was a thing where Edwin Blackgaard would come back and have a sword fight with his brother.
Oh.
Because Shakespeare.
That would have been funny.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
They, once again, in this kind of like we're bringing things to a conclusion, they had Maxwell dying in the hospital as part of the initial plan. There was also, I think, once again, talking about bringing things to a conclusion or whatnot, or tying up loose ends or whatever, which they already do a ton of, but there was plans for more. They had Tasha coming back to Odyssey to help out with all of this, and her getting trapped underground with Jason with the tunnel explosion. So like maybe Blackgaard and Jack are in one section and they run down to stop and they get trapped under there and talk things out as a result. There is an idea of this is insane. Jellyfish trying to escape Wits End, and so he goes to jump off a window, but it's not a real window, it's a hologram Wit had put there, so that there is a way for Wit to help stop the trouble even though he's not present.
Okay. That's the kind of idea I would throw out and then immediately get shot down.
Right. And like, that's the thing, is I don't know how much of this stuff is script and how much is...
idea board in the office, like, how are we going to do this?
Right, and how much is just like pitch meetings.
Yeah.
But the initial plan for Eugene and Bernard was that they were going to chase after Bovril and run his car off the road.
Ooh.
But just for time, they cut that into siphon the gas.
Which, very in character.
This is insane.
Okay.
After Jack's offer of salvation in the tunnel, Blackgaard would hear the sounds of the minions of hell coming for his soul. He would then choose to accept Jack's offer and ask to receive Christ. Then the bomb would go off, with both Blackgaard and Jack hanging from a ladder in the basement of Wits End, and Blackgaard realized that the only way Jack can live is for him to let go, so he lets go of the ladder, giving his life to Jack. Okay. You want to unpack that one, Andrew?
So, I'm very okay with the end of that. I am not okay with getting scared into salvation with the minions of Satan himself.
Yes, that is horrible. The idea of,
that's
like...
what people did. This is the 80s. This is peak, like, televangelist.
No, this is 90s, but...
Okay, whatever. It's still that culture of, like, scaring the hell out of people, basically.
Right. And, yeah, it is... Yeah, it's then, like... Right. The idea of, like... I think it's genuinely more powerful for the show to not give Blackgaard redemption.
Yeah, no. It was
so,
definitely
like,
much more uncomfortable.
I'm glad that they really settled into that. This is an interesting pitch.
The minions of Satan.
Yes.
We have, like, logical things that happen, weird little things. Characters come back. Minions of Satan come and call for Regis Blackgaard, and he gets spooked.
Yeah. There was a huge fight, in their own words, between Lawler and McCusker about how to end this thing. So in the last battle, where at the end, Narnia is gone, Phil Lawler wanted Wits End destroyed. he wanted the explosion to take down Wit's End as well. And that was how the series was going to end.
That would have been tough, but like I also kind of mess with it. It would close the book on spin-offs, like that's what that does.
Right.
But
I think it's powerful and there's something cool about it, but I like better the idea of, even if they didn't come back and do more, just this going out on the show on saying like, and Wit's End will reopen in a few weeks.
Exactly. Cool, because the thing that's special about Odyssey is that it's a huge universe that's continuous, that we've talked about so many times, and that's what that does. It's like, remember, this is a big universe and life goes on, and this is just a part of it. And that's really nice. And I don't think you can get that feeling if you just blow up Wit's End.
Yes. And then the initial idea, which I think they later co-op for Novacom, whether or not it was important or intentional or not. So they wanted it to end with this huge trial wherein Jellyfish is on trial and Maxwell is the key witness against him, and Maxwell has to deal with forgiving Jellyfish but still making sure he comes to justice. And this whole thing kind of echoing his own arc and also giving us some Maxwell stuff at the end, and maybe some more like maybe Maxwell's kind of figuring out this Christianity thing. Like, it would have been a really cool way to end, but that's not a move you do if you want the show to end.
No.
And so yeah, then talking about wanting to bring the show to an end and them not being able to do it was just like, every answer they attempted to answer, every question they attempted to answer just gave them more questions. And so they were like, well, if we can't actually bring this to a conclusion. We're just going to have to make it a new beginning. They were like, well, what do we do with Eugene and Katrina now that, Eugene is a Christian? What happens with Edwin coming back? Like, so many of these like little things where they're like, the story should kind of continue. And so they made the call to not shut down the series, to keep going. And so, yeah, that is a really interesting decision, and one that obviously proved to be good from a financial standpoint, if nothing else. But like, I'm glad it continued to exist.
Yeah, me too. I'm very impressed that they continued, especially because they built the show around one character on one voice actor, and that voice actor died.
Yep.
And then they managed to pretty much tie it up if they wanted to, Yeah.
And the show changes over the years, but they did stick with it.
Have we gotten to album 75 yet?
No. I don't think so. Maybe?
68 is the most recent one.
Oh, okay.
So, what we're seeing here is every 25 albums, there's a new chapter of Odyssey, right? Because album 50 was the beginning of the Andrei Stoica era.
Right.
This was pretty much the end. I mean, this was obviously the end of the Housemouth era and the beginning of Walker. No, what's his name?
You're talking about Paul Harlinger. Right. And so it's arguable that like, hey, like, is this the conclusion to, like, is this the conclusion and Love is in the Air becomes like the new series? I really think the new series doesn't really start until A Search for Wit.
Yeah.
But I understand that like we now kind of finished off this and we have a couple episode transition before like Welcome Home creates this new era of Odyssey.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is where we leave things. Man, I feel like there's so much more that I could talk about always. Yeah, it's a show that obviously means a lot to me, and this series was really fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And let it be said again, we still have 2 more Blackgaard episodes, and we'll be back to talk about those next week. anything you wanna plug, Andrew?
No.
Yeah,
There's
me
nothing
either.
left in me. There is only Odyssey and lack thereof.
Yep. So, with all that,
All that.
of that being said,
I would like to take a moment, real quick, to just thank the Chalk Squad for joining us on this journey.
yeah,
We've been doing this for a long time, and by that I mean like close to 2 years now. And we've covered Novacom, and we've covered Blackgaard, and I remember starting covering Novacom, thinking, okay, this is fun. I like doing this. Novacom drug on for a while, but then it started getting fun afterwards, and then we were staring down the barrel of Blackgaard, and I was like, I'm not quite sure if I can do this again. The last time was a lot. It was a very long period of time, a lot of time investment. I'm in college and I work, and
Yep.
I'm a busy person, but
yeah, we did
this
not
show has kind
really
of
expect to get this out on this regular basis at this point.
no,
We were
not
looking at
all.
Blackgaard going, yeah, we're probably going to be skipping around some. We might take a break from Blackgaard and come back to it. Like,
Yeah.
who knows what this is going to look like. And then, yeah, it ended up working.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. And to be honest with you, I would credit that largely to the fans. I think that the difference between Novacom and Blackgaard was Novacom was very much me being enamored with making the show and being with Dylan and having my own thing, and doing that and covering something that I knew really well, and that's what moved it forward. Whereas I've found the most motivated times I've been during the Blackgaard saga have been because of fan interactions and things like that. All
Yeah.
the emails, the tweets, the merch, the jokes. I feel like it's, gotten to another level at this point.
Yeah, it's nice. I will clarify, fans of Odyssey who happen to listen to us, calling people fans of us is strong.
No, yeah,
Just so we're not coming off as hoity-toity. Like,
No,
listeners of this show, the Chalk Squad,
The
you
Chalk
guys know
Squad.
who you are.
Yeah.
I in no way feel like, oh yes, you people are fans of me.
No. I feel like
but-
if anything, the more you listen to the show, the less you like
Right.
me.
But very much the sense of community that has come from doing this portion of the show has been far greater than...
Ever before.
Right.
Yeah. And and honestly, like, there was a part of me when we started covering Blackgaard that was like, you know what? This would be a good place to ride that out on. Like, if this show won't go on for eternity, this would be a good ending point.
Much like it was for Odyssey.
Yeah, exactly. But here I find myself, recording the last normal one, and all I can think about is listening and recording more Odyssey stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really thankful for my wonderful co-host and editor, producer Dylan, and I'm very thankful for everybody who listens to this Silly Adventures in Odyssey podcast with a strange name.
Yeah.
Great
fair.
name. Strange name, though.
And yeah. And so that's where we end. So we will be back again in 2 weeks to cover Blackgaard's Revenge. We just needed a week off after all this. But then after, we are doing a palate cleanser from the Blackgaard series, doing a Dylan's forcing Andrew to listen to a 3-episode arc. We're doing The Other Side of the Glass. All 3 of those in the weeks following. Good Wooten and Bernard. I mean, what more could you ask for?
Literally nothing. That's kind of my brand.
Right, and jumping more than 10 years into Odyssey's future. And yeah, so we'll be talking about that if you listen ahead and whatnot and want to start working towards that. That is coming, and we'll be announcing as we continue to go on kind of what we'll be doing, because we've checked the 2 big boxes.
Yeah.
So who knows, guys?
Yeah.
We've got
anywhere.
so many
much more.
ideas.
So many ideas.
I have so many things I want to do, and then there's also stuff beyond that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, thank you for listening.
Yeah,
and
thank
I
you.
can't wait to get to talk to you again in 2 weeks for Blackgaard's Revenge, Part 1. Bye guys. So we will be back.
Wadfam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or focus on the family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at wadfamchalkpod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. The Final Conflict was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Acebo, and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the Wadfam Chalk Pod.